Thank you, Mac. I really appreciate being here today, and I just want to absolutely recommend all the wonderful work that Lexington's been doing on these issues. It's absolutely outstanding. I'm also happy I got to speak after our friend from the HHS there, because I'm going to talk a little bit about policy today, but I want to talk personally about what AI and advanced computation technologies have meant for my life and the life of millions of others today. I want to tell you a quick story. So on June 4th of this year, my son was visiting me while I was home from college. He's 22. And we were planning a day fishing together. And I said, Toby, before we go out, hold on, I've got a problem with my eye. And he's like, okay. And I said, I'm noticing like there's spider webs or something funny in my eye right now, and I'm seeing black dots on the side. I started fearing I was having a stroke. I said, keep an eye on me for a second. I said, but you know what? I'm going to type in the symptoms or the things I'm experiencing into an LLM. I'm just going to see what happens. And so I did. And I described them in great detail, and my son helped me out a little bit because I was still struggling with my vision. And very quickly, it said, it sounds like you've got all the symptoms of posterior vitreous detachment, PVD, or otherwise known shorthand as floaties. Floaties are a common problem for a lot of Americans, but they don't see them necessarily. They can suddenly develop out of nowhere. And on that day, on that Thursday when my son was visiting, they came like that. And I got pretty spooked by that, and I was like, wow, this is concerning. And so I said, give me everything you've got on this to my LLM. It spit out all this information. I said, prioritize the information from the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic, which I trust are trusted sources for me on a lot of things, medical ailments I have. Instantly, I was given a full education on everything having to do with PVD or floaties. And then it asked me some follow-up questions. It asked me follow-up questions like, how old are you? I said, 57 years of age. Have you ever had any eye disorders or surgeries before? Yes, I have. I've had very serious eye problems. I've had 2 other types of procedures to basically save my vision. What were they? The LLM asked. I explained I had early onset cataracts and had that corrected by having laser surgery to rip out my old bad lenses and have new ones installed. Amazing you can do that. We can. And then I had something called adult strabismus, which was a very rare disorder for adults to have, like 0.0001%, like 15, 16 years ago. Had operations for that. Very quickly, it said to me, you need to immediately contact your doctor. You need to seek out some help on this because this could be very serious. It could have retinal tears, or it could lead to full-blown retinal detachment. That's scary stuff because that could be a loss of vision. Very quickly made an appointment, talked to my doctor. I said everything that I had learned from talking to my LLM about what has happened. I said also I've had these previous procedures. My doctor said you should walk across the street immediately to a retinal care facility. I did. An hour later, I was having laser retinopexy surgery. Emergency surgery because they noticed tears and floaties in both eyes that were ultimately going to probably lead, at least in my right eye, to full-blown retinal detachment and possible blindness. I tell this story because it's not my only story, but because it's a powerful one about how emerging technologies, informational technologies, have given the ability to me and to many millions of others to empower ourselves with more information about our lives, our bodies, our health, and have rational, serious communications with our doctors, our specialists, and others, both for ourselves and for our loved ones. If you want to see a really, truly amazing website, go to AISaveMe.org or AISaveMe.org, where people tell their stories about how they've learned more about themselves using the technologies. But just for kicks, remember I said I had 3 eye surgeries. I would really probably almost certainly be blind in my right eye today and going blind in my left without these procedures. I won't go into the gruesome details of any of them because you don't want to hear that. But the bottom line is when I had my strabismus problem, again, 15, 16 years ago, there was no LLMs, there was no AI assistant. In fact, I spent over a year and a half going from specialist to specialist, eye doctor, trying to figure it out. And many, many people misdiagnosed me. In fact, for a while I was raising crazy glasses on my head that had like prisms in them. I looked like some cartoonish character with big buggy eyes coming at you. It wasn't my problem at all. They couldn't figure it out until finally I found a specialist at Children's Hospital who finally told me about the one specialist who was going to be able to perform a surgery to save my vision. Just for kicks, I went back to my LLM and I typed in all my symptoms from 16 years ago, and within minutes it told me exactly what the problem was. And I said, boy, that would have been nice to have 15, 16 years ago, that knowledge at my fingertips. I tell this story because, like our previous speaker said, we're talking about informational empowerment, individual empowerment to take control of our health and our lives when we have this sort of explosion of knowledge at our fingertips. When I go in to see my doctors and specialists today, not just for that problem, my eyes, but also for my multiple skin cancers like this gash I've got on my face and many others, I can give them pieces of information that I have found by having communications and knowledge searches through my LLMs. I'm able, in fact, to take my phone, take pictures of skin problems and send them into my skin doctor so I don't have to have, hopefully, a sixth or seventh skin surgery. I've already had 5. And so that's informational empowerment that moves the needle on human progress in a huge way for ourselves and our families. And I could go on down the list like this, but I encourage you to go to that website that I mentioned and just take a look at these sort of amazing stories out there about how people are empowering themselves using these information technologies. Now, I would say that it's all good news, but it's not, because many, many people want to stop that information or technological revolution from ever happening, from expanding. They want to take steps to engage on what I have labeled an almost outright war on computation and AI. Now, you may think I'm exaggerating, but let me just give you a short list that I came up with last night, and I posted on Twitter if you want to see it, about some of the ideas that are currently floating around up here and across America about how to control the computational revolution and algorithmic technologies. We have proposals now floating for things like mandated system kill switches, AI nationalization and golden shares where government sort of socializes companies, open source restrictions or bans on various types of open weight models or technologies, FDA for AI-like licensing regimes to pre-vet these models, expansions of existing agency powers to include ambitious new forms of not just regulation, but new liability regimes, data center moratoriums, which you've heard about multiple times today, which should strike at the very infrastructure layer of the computational revolution, and then countless other types of speech-related controls on how we use AI chatbots, AI agents, and so on and so forth. This comes on top of the fact that we now have 1,830 bills pending on AI-related matters in the United States, an unparalleled patchwork in my 35 years of covering technology policy in this town. Never seen anything like it, not just for technology policy, but for any policy issue, period. These things have consequences. These actions have costs. We are potentially talking about bottling up the most important information and knowledge revolution of our lifetimes. That will take choices off the table from people. It will limit the ability of these systems and technologies to work the kind of magic they're capable of. Our friend from the HHS talked about all of the other ways that it's improving healthcare systems. How about this for starters? When I went to see my latest specialist who did the laser surgery to correct for my retinal tears, she was using a laser assisted thing and a headset. She was the only person in the room dictating to an AI all of her findings so that we'd all be immediately uploaded and there for me to take around and talk to other specialists if needed, or for her to reference in the future. According to studies, 15 to 30% of all healthcare costs are administrative costs. Just paperwork BS. Time spent by doctors, nurse practitioners, and other experts just filling out paper. Imagine if we could just get rid of that and what it would mean for our standard of care for each and every individual. But think more importantly about when we have all this information at our disposal and we can utilize it to create the long elusive goal of truly personalized medicine. It's about making sure that we can talk to our doctors in a more educated way and to actually find and get the treatment we need faster than ever before. Hopefully faster than my previous surgeries and other problems where I had to wait years to find solutions. So I could go on and on about this, but I want to rope it back just to one other thing, because I try to connect this to, obviously what it means to each and every one of us personally. But obviously this has broad-based ramifications for our nation. The Lexington Institute has done wonderful work talking about the importance of a strong technology base for America's not just only geopolitical competitiveness, but our geopolitical strategic footing, what it means for our national security. We are absolutely in a race with the Chinese Communist Party for advanced computational technological capabilities and supremacy. If we here in America are passing 1,800 bills and shooting ourselves in the foot while the Chinese are racing ahead, that's a problem for us. It's a problem for our nation. It's a problem for our security. We have got to take these issues seriously. We should absolutely regulate AI. Here's the best news of all. We already do in many ways, and we can improve upon that. We have 442 federal agencies, folks. All of them are really, really interested in AI. All of them already have enormous regulatory capabilities to address problems having to do with consumer welfare and harm, various types of things about unfair and deceptive activities, things to do with fraud, things to do with civil rights violations and algorithmic deception. We have these tools. And yes, we'll need more. It's true. But we shouldn't layer it all on preemptively, bottle up this knowledge revolution, and pretend that we're going to regulate like we're Europe without having any consequences. That will be a disaster for the United States of America. I hope we don't choose that path. Thank you for having me here today.